Welcome back. Today I am going to try to teach the king plus rook checkmate, which is one of the basic checkmates. It's more difficult than king plus queen, but it has some of the same principles. And unlike the other one, I'm going to start here with what I see as the ending position. What we want to end up with is the enemy king trapped on the edge of the board with our king directly opposite and our rook cutting off this file when it's our turn, because we can checkmate here. Our king cuts off these squares so the enemy king cannot escape, and this is checkmate. Now the hard part is getting the king to this position. So let's start at a starting position. Okay, now from here it's much more difficult, but some of the same principles apply as applied in the king versus queen checkmate pattern. And one of those is that we cannot checkmate the enemy king in the middle of the board. We're going to have to force it to one of the edges, either the A file, the H file, the 8th rank, or the 1st rank. And we're going to have to do that by slowly but surely cutting off ranks and files from the enemy king, while being careful to make sure that our rook doesn't get captured. Now, just as with the other one, we cannot lose in this position. We can draw or stalemate. And just as with the queen checkmate, we're going to need the help of our king. So there are many different possible first moves in this position, but the idea is the same, is that we want to move the rook to where we cut off a new rank and then eventually cut off a new file until we can trap this king on the edge of the board. Unlike with the queen, however, with the rook, the enemy king can approach our power piece from the diagonal, because the queen cut that off and it couldn't approach, but here it can. So that means we have to make more what let's call waiting moves with our king. We have to move our king while we wait for the opponent to move away. Then we can draw the box smaller. For example, here, I can immediately move here and trap the king in this lower quadrant of the board. And yes, it can approach again, but we can protect our rook this way. And it has to move away again. If it moves down, we will move down, cutting off yet another file. If it moves over, we can use our king to cut off these squares while our rook is still cutting off this, and it has to move away again. So let's say it moves here, we can cut off another file. And again, our king is still protecting our rook. So yes, it can approach. We don't want to move down because that lets the king out of this box that we've drawn. But we can make, again, a waiting move, making sure to keep protecting our rook, and the king has to move away again. If it moves to the left, we can bring our king here to again force it back. Let's back up. If it moves down, again, we move our rook to cut off yet another file or another rank from the enemy king. And this simple process will happen no matter which way the enemy king goes, whether it goes to the left, whether it moves back, whether it goes to the right. We want to slowly but surely trap it on the edge, because again, we can't checkmate the enemy king in the middle of the board. We have to have it on the edge. So we've moved down, we've cut off another rank, we're still cutting off this file. It has to move away again. If it moves to the edge, we can't quite trap it on the edge just yet, because if we move our rook down now, it's just going to capture us. So if it moves to the edge, we have to bring our king, and if it comes back, we can bring our king again, and it has to move away again. One of these two places. Now here, if it moves to the edge, we can move our rook down, and we've trapped it on the edge of the board. It can't escape this little box that we've drawn. But backing up, if it doesn't move to the edge, again, we can bring our king, because our king prevents the opponent from moving here, and our rook is still cutting off these files. So now, again, it either has to move to the edge or move back. Let's say it moves back. Now we can cut off yet another file with our rook. Once again, it could approach us because it knows we're trying to trap it. The opponent knows we're trying to trap them on the edge, so they might come back. We can make the waiting move. It has to make one of these three moves. Again, if it moves to the edge, we can trap it on the edge. If it moves back, we can bring our king, and constantly using our king to cut off these squares with what's called the opposition, while our rook continues to trap the king in this box. If it moves back, we move over. We're trapping it closer and closer to the corner and thus to the edge. Yes, it can approach us again. Again, we can wait. It has to move, If it moves to the edge, we trap it on the edge. If it moves away, we bring our king. So it just depends on what the opponent does here. Move away, bring our king. Again, cutting off these squares with our king and cutting off the rank with our rook. Now it has to choose an edge square to move to. If it moves to this edge, we can't trap it on the edge just yet because our king's in the way. If it moves to this edge, we can't quite trap it on the edge just yet because it will capture our rook. So again, it's going to take some time. We have to be patient. If it moves here, we can move our king, but then it's going to go here, and we can't trap it on the edge yet because it'll escape the box. So if it does move here, we want to bring our rook. Again, trapping it. Now it's trapped in these 4 squares. Has to make one of those moves. We can make a waiting move with our king. Now if it goes down, we can trap it on the edge. If it moves over, we can bring our king. Let's say it moves over, we bring our king. Our rook is cutting off these, and our king is cutting off these, so it has to move to the corner. Now here, because our king is still controlling these squares, we can checkmate this way. Normally, if this position were to be seen further up the board, the king could just escape diagonally. But here, there's no place for it to escape diagonally because it's in the corner. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. But again, the idea is we have to use our king to protect our rook, use our rook to cut off files and ranks from the enemy king until it is either trapped in the corner like this or trapped on one of the 4 edges as we showed in the original position. So thank you for watching. Feel free to practice this until you have it. It's going to come up. It has come up in several of my games, and the first time it came up, I didn't know how to do it. So I just moved my rook around, checking constantly, and running away from the enemy king when it got too close, and I didn't know what to do. But now that I've learned it, it has come up again, and it was a relatively simple matter to trap the enemy king on the edge and checkmate. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.